All right, we have lots of stuff, lots of news to get through today. It should be a decently good show. This podcast around last time it wasn't. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about. But remember, guys, this posts every Saturday. The reason it didn't this past weekend is I actually totally forgot that I had to do it, and I had it on my notes in my schedule, and I don't know how I missed it, but I missed it. All right, so let's get into the first story. And the first story is about the top free agents left in the league. Obviously, most of them are gone, but there's a couple people there's always somebody, man, who everybody passes on. Nobody gives anybody, a good chance, and they turn it around really quickly. I can't remember the last, man. I guess the last season would have been Vernon Davis for the Redskins. He had an outstanding year, very underrated player, and a lot of people obviously thought he was washed up, but he had a great season with the Redskins. So there's always somebody you can find that's going to have a huge impact on your football team. That's either older, some people think are out of their prime. I think the same thing with DeMarcus Ware. A lot of people didn't think there was a lot of question marks. Did he still have it? And I think he proved obviously a ton of people wrong, being one of the bigger reasons they even made the Super Bowl. So there's always somebody that is left that a lot of people aren't just kind of like, he doesn't have it anymore. So, and there's always circumstances why that is. People don't take an account to that. So let's go through the list here. The first one up is Perry Riley, and basically we're just gonna talk about the player, and talk about if he's been visiting with other people. And remember, I forgot to mention this. We give you all the NFL news you need to know about on this podcast. So this is a new show. The podcast, we just go through news, we talk about it, I give you my opinions on it. So these are the top free agents that are left. One of them is Perry Riley. Obviously, Perry Riley had a really good, Raiders defense, for all its faults, they had a great, the pass rush really didn't start getting going until later in the season. I felt like it should have been a little bit more potent early on. Bruce Irvin was kind of inconsistent last season. Then he really got on fire. I think his best game was probably against the Chargers. Really helped the Raiders close out that game. I think it was Week 15 against the Chargers. I think it was their second game against the Chargers. Obviously, I think it was their second game, yeah. So he kind of came on late, and then the secondary really struggled in the beginning. A lot of people forgot that Raiders defense was really struggling in the beginning, and that had a lot to do with what, some of the teams they faced. Obviously, the Saints, that was a shootout. I think that went up to 38 points. The Raiders ended up going for 2 and winning that game. But the point is, the Raiders defense really took a while to kind of get, because there was a lot of new pieces on that defense. A lot of people don't understand that. It took a while for them to mesh together. Obviously, Jack Del Rio, he's a great defensive mind. One of the better defensive minds in the NFL. One of the most underrated defensive minds in the NFL. And he has a great offense, too. Not a lot of people know that, but Jack Del Rio is great. Great defensive mind. I think he's starting to get that defense together. But I think mainly their woes and what they really struggled on, even in later parts of the season, is their secondary. I felt like their secondary, their linebackers also played very poorly. So Perry Riley, I think, kind of gets meshed up all within that, but I don't think it was solely his fault, is my point. He was Pro Football Focus's 15th best linebacker. And he had an okay season. He was really solid with the Redskins before the Raiders. So if you're in need of a situational guy, a depth guy, a playmaker in rotation, I feel like Perry Riley would be your guy. He hasn't really met with anybody other than the Raiders. They're trying to get a deal done with the Raiders, but obviously the Raiders added Johnny Jenkins from my Miami Dolphins. I'm a Dolphins fan. They added him, so maybe that's. They don't really play the same position, but all I know is that Perry Riley, good player, solid player. If you need a linebacker, if you need depth on your team, Perry Riley is your guy. And he can give you quality minutes. He's pretty all around guy. He's a physical guy. He's not great at anything, but he doesn't really he's again just a good situational guy. Really solid. Had good stats last season. So yeah. Now, moving on from that. We have Ryan Clady, who I really don't know if you would necessarily, I don't know. Ryan Clady, he's I think he's 30 or he's 29, I can't remember, but he's still out there. I don't think if I had to pick a player, especially when it comes to offensive linemen, you saw like Bryant McKinney and some really good offensive linemen. They just, when things go wrong, they really go wrong. I really think Ryan Clady's probably out of his prime. He didn't really have a good season last season. was a part of a bad offensive line, and he used to. I mean, obviously, he was one of the better offensive linemen for a long time. But I think we can put a stamp on Ryan Clancy. I don't think if you're in need of offensive linemen, if you're like the Jets or somebody who needs an offensive lineman, I think you could add depth on your offensive line. Maybe the Chargers. I think he's a depth guy now. I don't really think he's a starter in the league anymore for a 16-game season. Obviously, he's dealt with injuries in the latter part of his career too, just nagging injuries. So I really wouldn't consider him somebody you would necessarily want. This next guy, obviously, is a big name, and somebody I've talked about for a while, and that's Nick Mangold. I think he's another guy. Really, his play when he's healthy, he's a Pro Bowl caliber player. Obviously one of the best Jets ever. Not returning to the Jets, he's had visits with the Baltimore Ravens and the Jacksonville Jaguars, so teams are very interested in him, his services. But again, I think if he went to a Super Bowl contender, just to add depth, even if you don't need it, like the Steelers, obviously they have one of the better offensive lines in the league, but if you're somebody who's a contending team, who wants to add depth, I think my Miami Dolphins would be a good spot for him. Just to be a depth guy, not to be a starter. He could come in and compete if he is at that level. Obviously, he would start. I mean, he can start at guard, center. And again, if you're a team that's maybe like the Jets probably need him the most, but they're in a rebuilding process. The Jaguars, teams that need a really solid, really good offensive line. The Falcons, they could use some depth on their offensive line. So Nick Mangold, if he's healthy, is still a great player. But he's really struggled to stay healthy. So he could be somebody. Again, if you're a contending team, add depth to your football team, and really solidify. Depth is very, very important in the NFL, especially in the playoffs. You need these kind of guys to come in and really hold down the fort for you. You don't want to lose your best center or whatever. If you're the Raiders, you lose Rodney Houston and you have nobody behind him. They lost Kelechi Osemele last season, really hurt the Raiders' offensive line. Even though that Raiders' offensive line is great, depth can kill you if you don't have it. So Nick Mangold, great player. The last one I would say is Darrelle Revis. He's one of those guys, man. I'm telling you, if you're a team that needs, again, not even a depth guy, if you need a slot corner, maybe like the Dallas Cowboys, maybe you need some leadership, maybe you need something. The Dolphins, they need a safety. He can play safety. If you're a team that needs a safety, to come in and play and plug in and play, I think he still has it. I think he still has it to play corner. I don't think he's the lockdown, I'm going to take your number one guy away anymore that Darrelle Revis has always been. But I think he can be that Charles Woodson guy. He can make that transition to safety easily. I mean, he's one of the best instincts we've ever seen in any kind of defensive player ever. His instincts are unreal. His pre-snap, he just knows football and he plays fast. He doesn't think. Whatever system he's in, he can make an impact on any team. The Raiders, that would be a nice team. Obviously, they need secondary help, and they know versatility on that defense. Obviously, Charles Woodson was obviously a great corner, switched to safety, so he could really put a contending team over the top. Like I said, my Miami Dolphins could use him because of T.J. McDonald being suspended for 8 games of the season. So if you're looking, again, depth, or even he can start in that slot corner role for the Cowboys, just to add depth, the Redskins, someone who can come in and really improve your secondary. I think Darrelle Revis can really make an impact on anybody's secondary. So he's another guy. There's no news about him visiting anybody, which is weird. I think he could be a great player in any defense. I think he'd be an impact player. I should rephrase that. This next story is about Colin Kaepernick. Obviously, he's been in the news lately because of his ties to Seattle, which is so weird. Because as a fan, when you look at the rivalry that was the Seahawks and the 49ers, when they were both, when the 49ers had Justin Smith, Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, Carlos Rogers, just hitters, man. Aldon Smith. People forget how great Aldon Smith was before the suspensions and, the struggle with alcoholism. Aldon Smith was a baller, man. He had 16 sacks. I think it was even more than maybe 16, 17 sacks. Justin Smith pushing the middle. McDonald in the middle. That Ahmad Brooks coming off the edge. That team was nasty, man. That team was nasty. On offense, you had Frank Gore in his prime. You had Michael Crabtree, who's one of the more underrated players in the league. He's a number one wide receiver. Obviously, he proved that in Oakland, getting 1,000 yards. Obviously, he struggled. He's also struggled with nagging injuries in his career. They had a great offensive line. Great coach in Harbaugh. Alex Smith was in his prime at the time. Colin Kaepernick, obviously, when he took over the reins, really made that offense explosive. And that team was just one of the best teams I've ever seen play. That team was so good, and they were so good. They were so old school of how they would just take away your will. And then the exact same team that was on the up and coming, basically looking at themselves in the mirror, was the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, Michael Bennett, KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Russell Wilson. I mean, the list goes on and on. Golden Tate when he was there, Percy Harvin, Doug Baldwin, Luke Wilson, who was underrated at the time. Obviously, they had Max Unger, who really anchored that offensive line, and those teams, that rivalry was so good. And just the fact that Colin Kaepernick might be a Seahawk is really interesting. Things change. Obviously, the 49ers have been not so good since Harbaugh left. It's actually been terrible since Harbaugh left. And it's unfortunate because Harbaugh and the owner couldn't get along, but they've got a good thing going down there in 49er land now with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. So, yeah, things always turn around for the better. But, again, it's just weird that, it's just a weird time that it's just weird how the NFL landscape flips in a second. Like, the 49ers were built to last. Obviously, they got hit with retirements across the board. It's unfortunate. It really is. I forgot to mention Delaney Walker was on that team, on that 49ers team. So that team was so good. That team was so very, very good. So yeah, just weird how things change so fast. But anyway, Colin Kaepernick to the Seattle Seahawks. It's interesting. Obviously, they had him in for a visit. He's still... Listen, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, I really don't understand why you don't pursue the man. The Blake Bortles experiment, I could be totally wrong about this. Because, I've had this argument. I have a friend that's a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. When you're a quarterback... This is what I'll say about Blake Bortles. And I think the Jaguars should sign Colin Kaepernick because I think he is a better quarterback than Blake Bortles is right now. When you look at Blake Bortles, what division does this man play in? And this is one of the knocks I have on Andrew Luck. When you compare an Andrew Luck to like Russell Wilson, I think it's not even close. I mean, statistically, Russell Wilson has actually better stats than Luck does, and he's obviously just as clutch. I hate when people compare the two, because this is the same argument I use for Luck, right? When you compare Blake Bortles and you're like, well, he really hasn't had a team. That's bullcrap. That's not true. Last season he had a pretty dang good team. And he was in a pretty... Now, last season, the AFC South really improved. The year before that, the Jaguars still had a pretty talented team. Their defense was shaky. It wasn't good, but it was not bad. I mean, and their offense had talent on it. They still had Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. Their offensive line was not very good also. I'll give them that. But when you are in the AFC South... one of the worst divisions for the longest time, where multiple teams, including the Jaguars, including the Colts, were losing. Either, obviously the Titans have been terrible for a while, and then Marcus Mariota took him a while to switch. Well, not really a while, but he switched. He turned things around with Mike Mularkey down there. But these teams were losing 10+ games. These teams were bad. And the Jaguars can barely win 3 games in a season. So I don't think Blake Bortles is the answer. Blake Bortles is the answer. He's the king of garbage time touchdowns. The man is just not the answer down there in Jacksonville. He could totally turn it around. They have a very talented team now. They're trying, obviously, with the move to get Brandon Albert. They're another team that could use Nick Mangold, trying to really solidify that offensive line. But he was bad in a bad division, which is not good if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. So that's all. It's just, I don't think he's a good quarterback. He's played in a very bad division for a very, very long time. So that's just my opinion on Blake Bortles. So it's weird that they wouldn't try to get a Colin Kaepernick who, for all his faults in the media, you shouldn't take that, because Colin Kaepernick is he's not a great player. Over these last few seasons, he hasn't been amazing. but he's a great competitor. If you hear people like Dan Quinn, you hear anybody who's coached against him in that division for a long period of time, Bruce Arians, they all say the same thing. The man is a great competitor, and he's an explosive player. He's an accurate thrower. I don't think he's inaccurate. Why the media doesn't respect him, and maybe the NFL fans don't respect him. That's not to get into that whole situation. I think if you're an if you anybody should have their own opinion. That's how the way I think. So it shouldn't affect him going to a team. Obviously, I guess it can affect your locker room, but I think from hearing from players, they have respect for the man. And whatever you think about Colin Kaepernick, the man can play football. He does his job well, is my point. So it's weird that the Jacksonville Jaguars won't look at him and say, we could make the playoffs with this guy as our starting quarterback. I think he's better than what they have in-house now. I think it would be a good environment for him to go to, a young football team. And for all the stupid things Colin Kaepernick is, he's not a vocal guy. He's not a demonstrous. He's not this is my franchise kind of leader, but he is a good competitor, and that rubs off on the culture there down in Jacksonville. And when it comes from the top, which is your quarterback, which is what you build your whole team around, and it just trickles down, I think that's good for your culture. I think that's good for your football team. So it's interesting that the Jacksonville Jaguars, with the move for Tom Coughlin, the great move that they kept Doug Monroe, who's a really good football head coach. They're building a good culture there. They have a talented football team, and I think the quarterback is still the missing piece there. I think Colin Kaepernick could have led that team to a winning season, or at least at 500, 8-8, or above it, and really contended for that division title, which is not hard to do. I mean, obviously, it's still the AFC South. The Colts are still kind of building. They've really got a lot of things to work on. The Titans are here. I think they're here depending on how healthy Marcus Mariota can stay. Throughout Marcus Mariota's career, not very durable. So he's got to stay healthy. And then obviously the Texans, really good defense. That offense, huge question mark there. If Deshaun Watson is as good as I think he can be, then that's a very dangerous team. But I think Colin Kaepernick could still go to the Jacksonville Jaguars and have a really good career. So it's very interesting. I mean, if you look at his stats, what he did with a bad 49ers team, he was underweight, he was not healthy, he was dealing with all this media bullcrap. And he was still trying to be a starting quarterback for one of the most famous franchises in sports, which is the San Francisco 49ers. And he did a very good job on a very bad team with a very bad coach with Chip Kelly. So I think he can still play football. I really do believe that. All right, so this next story is about Sheldon Richardson. This is a very interesting story. And this gets really into detail. You guys can read about this on Pro Football Rumors at NFL.com. If you guys want to read this yourself, it's a good read. And it's a poll. It says, where will Sheldon Richardson play next? There were a ton of rumors that, the Jets were shopping him around, trying to get rid of him. I thought it was going to happen on draft day for sure. I thought it was going to be a package deal, but obviously Jamal Adams fell right onto the New York Jets' laps. Was a crapping miracle. And if you're a Jets fan, you should be very, very happy with that. Another guy who's a great leader, great culture. Now, here's the thing I'll say about he can change a culture, but your head coach has got to do that before. If your head coach, he's got to do it too. So, getting into Sheldon Richardson, the team that the New York Jets were last season is not a team. That team hated each other. I mean, they could not get along. Everybody was showing up late for team meetings. Nobody cared about football, which is the worst state your franchise could possibly be in when you have a bunch of crap and wild. Nobody cares the win. Nobody cares about the fan. It's just trash. I mean, you saw so many players leave. Darrelle Revis, he's not going back. Nick Mangold. These are players that should still be on their team that have been mainstays there and been franchise setters and tone setters for the good. So the Jets have had, they were a lot of animosity within that organization. So they're trying to get rid of a great player, Sheldon Richardson, who's a Pro Bowler. Who won Defensive Rookie of the Year at one point. A lot of people forget that. He's a great player. So this goes into who the Jets went in to trade who they shopped him around with. And I think it's very, very interesting. So if you guys want to go read about it, you can. Obviously, I just rambled on and pretty much repeated myself 3 times there. I apologize for that. This is just, how I do things. So let's get into who was shopped around to, right? Let's see here. I'm looking for it. They're talking about who, let's see. Okay, right here. So they shopped him to, he's a 3-4 defensive end, so keep that in mind. They'll list him as a defensive end, but I think a 4-3 probably will play defensive tackle. So let's go through this. So the Buccaneers, they shopped to the Buccaneers, which is very interesting. They have Noah Spence, who's probably not a 3-down guy. They have obviously Gerald McCoy, so I guess they could use him. They already have a really solid defense front seven though, so I don't know. You never get enough depth though. They shopped into the Colts, who desperately need a defensive lineman. That team is so just poor Andrew Luck, man. You got to deal with a bunch of 40-year-old men on your team who can barely walk around, and have to have catheters and stuff. It's sad. Andrew Luck every day has got to wheel his defense into the to training camp, to OTAs, to workouts. Poor Andrew Luck. That team is so old. So yeah, they could definitely they're trying to rebuild that defense, and obviously they got a steal in the draft in Malik Hooker, who should really be the cornerstone that they build off of. So start with the front seven. You start with the defensive line, then you build out from there. And Sheldon Richardson would be a great piece to start with if the Colts got their hands on him. And Seattle, it's an interesting. Obviously, he would fit their system. They run a 3-4. He would fit right in there. Then the Denver Broncos, they've really missed Malik Jackson. Sheldon's a better version of Malik Jackson because I think he's a better pass rusher. When he's focused and when he goes to somewhere where there's a good coach like a Vance Joseph, Pete Carroll, somewhere where the culture corrects itself basically. If Sheldon Richardson goes somewhere like Indianapolis, I think a new fresh start would help him. But again, he comes from this terrible locker room. You don't want him to bring so he's got to go somewhere where the culture is good, I think, to really have an impact on the team and to win games. And they also shopped him around to the Dallas Cowboys, who Ron Millenary, I can never say his name right. God dang it, I'm just not even gonna try. Ron Millenary, whatever. Great coach, old man. Obviously was a head coach of one of the worst teams in NFL history. A team that didn't win a game, in the Detroit Lions, but nobody remembers that. Still a great coach. What he did, he's done wonders with that defensive line. So give him somebody like that, that would be amazing. So it's interesting. Sheldon Richardson. Let's see what the fans thought about this. I'm interested to see this. So they took a poll, and obviously you could vote for the Jets, Colts, Seahawks, or Buccaneers, wherever he would land, and you can also vote for other. Let's see what the results are. Can I see the results, please? Okay, here we go. So everybody voted for other. So people think he's not gonna land on it. I definitely think he's gonna either be a Colt or somebody like that. Thing is if you trade for him now, he's gonna be a free agent this next free agency. So you're basically renting the guy for a year, which isn't a bad. Depending what you give up for him, I think you probably would want to be a contender if you did that. If you want to rent somebody, so yeah, that's probably why the gun was not, the trigger was not pulled there. So that's very interesting. Sheldon Richardson, great player. I would not mind him. Obviously, if he was a Dolphin, I would not mind it, because we need some defensive tackles down here in Miami, and hopefully Jordan Phillips can, take the finger out of his butt and stop smelling it and crap and play some real football. All right, so let's look through here. There's some minor stories. Michael Vick to retire as Falcon? ? Who cares? I don't care where he retires. He was a great player for a short amount of time. The Lions signed Matt Asiata. I always get him mixed up with, I think it's his cousin Isaac Asiata, who we just drafted. And he's a great player. Or not a great. Sorry, I don't know why I just said that. He's a good. He's not the modern running back. I think that's why he can't find a team. But he's a great power back. Great if you see what the Patriots did with LeGarrette Blount, which I think every NFL team needs to take notes about that. The red zone is a very hard. If you have to be a great red zone team to be a contender, so if you add somebody like him, who's a great red zone running back, who can just move people, who's a locomotive, it's really valuable to have somebody like that on your football team. So if you see what the Patriots, how they use LeGarrette Blount, who led the NFL in touchdowns, something that NFL teams should really consider having on their football team is that big guy who can move bodies, because it's very valuable. Touchdowns are touchdowns. That's how you win football games. So there you go. Let's see here. Saints, Zach Strief, they restructured the contract. New Orleans scoring points, man. Great offense, terrible defense, poor Drew Brees. TJ Ward working on an extension with the Denver Broncos, which is very interesting. TJ Ward is one of the more underrated safeties in the league. He really is the not the general of that defense, but I feel like he's the missile of the defense. He's the nuclear strike of the defense. Like he's just a hitter, man. He's a great player. When he was a Cleveland Brown, he was a great player. If you can, if the Browns just kept some of their players, which they could have done, like Tashawn Gibson, who's a Jacksonville Jaguar now, T.J. Ward, if they kept those guys together, man, that defense is looking real nice right now. It is, even without those guys, it's looking a whole lot better with the addition of Jabril Peppers and obviously Myles Garrett. But the Browns let a lot of great players walk out that door, including, you know, Tyler Gabriel, Alex Mack, who were on a Super Bowl team and very big parts of that team. So if you're a Browns fan, man, that's unfortunate. Justin Gilbert, who's just utter hot garbage. The Seahawks have signed Malik McDowell. In case you guys are wondering about, you know, if you're a Seahawks fan, you're watching, you listen to this. I have no idea why you would listen, unless you're just a hardcore fan of the NFL. Then I appreciate you. Let's see here. Pats did not consider trading Garoppolo. That's utter trash. That is not true. They shoved him. They tried to get a first-round pick for him so hard. Bill Belichick really tried to work his magic there. I think, you know, and that's another thing dealing with the Patriots is, in dealing with Bill Belichick, really don't, you want to make sure when you're trading for something with him that you're getting a good deal. Obviously, the Chicago Bears have signed Victor Cruz. That's a great signing for them. They're just adding to their, you know, veteran wide receiver core. They're just really waiting on Kevin White to stay healthy. Kevin White, great player, a lot of potential. If he can just stay healthy, they run Adam Gase's offense even though he's not there anymore. They ran it last season after he left for my Miami Dolphins and brought us to the promised land. Adam Gase, probably the best head coach in the league. Second best probably to Bill Belichick. Love Adam so much. Just had to throw that in there for you guys. Just, you know, shout out my Dolphins a little bit. But anyway, you know, they still run the same offense basically with Jordan Howard. So they have a really good offense. I think Victor Cruz has a lot left. I think he had like 800 yards, 700 yards receiving last season. And so I think this is the year he got back in the NFL. It was a smooth transition. Now he can just play. And I think the Bears got a steal on Victor Cruz. Let's see here. The Giants cut Raheem Moore, and I can never say his name right. I'm just going to call him Shaq Williams. If you're a Giants fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Buffalo Bills signed Gerald Hodges. Gerald Hodges, I swear to God, visited every NFL team. A lot of teams wanted him. The Patriots really wanted him. He's a good role player. He ends up signing with the Buffalo Bills there. Richard Sherman wanted Cowboys trade? Question mark. To comment on this, I think Richard Sherman wants out of Seattle, and I know everybody's like, it's because of Pete Carroll, but I think it's because I don't think it's because of Pete Carroll. I think it's because of just the loss that he took. I mean, just watch that man's reaction to losing a Super Bowl. When you think of what a player's reaction should be when they lose a Super Bowl, it's that reaction. Just his facial expression should tell you. And he still doesn't. Marshawn Lynch literally sent Marshawn Lynch into retirement. So I don't think Richard Sherman wants to be a Seahawk anymore, and that hurts to say. I think he's always going to be, even if he went somewhere else, the man's going to be a Seahawk for life. Gave us NFL fans great moments. Obviously, the NFC Championship against the 49ers, that was an insane moment, great moment. It would be sad to see Sherman. I don't like the Seahawks. I appreciate the Seahawks because, you know, what they gave the NFL and what they gave the NFL history and that rivalry and you know, beating the Patriots. I mean, excuse me, I almost said beating the Patriots. I apologize, but what they accomplished with being the greatest offense to ever live and did for Broncos, just absolutely destroying it. So I appreciate the Legion of Boom and, you know, the things that they gave us, but it is going to be sad to see. I think Richard Sherman will not be Seahawk for much longer. And I think it will be good for his career just to have a fresh start. I don't think everybody likes to add drama onto things. I think it's just a fresh start, and I think that's what Richard Sherman needs. So I would hate for him to be a cowgirl, that's for sure. If he went to the Cowboys, that would suck. I hate the Cowboys. You really want to get some more bandwagons. You really want to pump up that balloon. You know, let that happen. Really do not want to have to deal with that. Let's see here. Brock Osweiler to compete for #1 job. Oh my god. Oh my god. Ugh. You guys don't understand the hate I have for Brock Osweiler. Brock Osweiler is maybe the worst quarterback I take that back. I hate Chad Henne. He's always going to be in my heart the worst Dolphins quarterback of all time just because of maybe Pat White is. You guys are making me have non-flashback. I don't want to talk about it. Brock Osweiler, he had the funniest answer to a question I have ever heard in my life. They asked him, can you be a starting quarterback in the NFL? And there might as well have been like Swan music playing in the background. There might as well have been just like epic Star Wars music. You got bump, stuff like that just playing in the background. And the man goes, and then we have a moment of silence. And he says, look at my tape. And I swear to God, that is the funniest dang answer an athlete has ever given in my life. He is either delusional or there is something wrong with him. This man is 6'7". He is taller than Rob Gronkowski. Okay? This man might as well be a crapping power forward, or excuse me, a center in the NBA now. All the small ball that they're playing, for God's sakes. Brock Osweiler, he throws balls in the dirt. Okay, and he's 6'7". The man for some reason, can't see over the offensive line when he's taller than everybody. It amazes me. It amazes me, guys. It amazes me. So can Brock? If I have Browns fans as friends, they love Cody Kessler. Deshaun Kaiser is a better quarterback now than crapping Brock Osweiler. Oh my God, Tom Savage, which is a great name for a quarterback, and I hope Tom Savage is a great. He's never going to be a great quarterback or even an okay quarterback, but what a name, Tom Savage, man, is better than Brock Osweiler, and that's sad. So, Jesus, that's just a dumb question. No, he cannot be a starting quarterback in the league, and if he is, bless you. The Bills have signed rookie quarterback Nathan Peterman. If you guys watch when Nathan Peterman was drafted and the reaction to, like, I think, look up, like, Bucky Brooks' reaction to Nathan Peterman. It is hilarious. It's hilarious. I mean, I've never seen so much disrespect in a man's words ever. Patriots signed wide receiver Andrew Hawkins. A lot of people are excited about that. If you're Patriots, who cares about Patriots? A bunch of bandwagons. I respect you if you grew up in New England, you grew up in Massachusetts. You grew up in Boston, wherever, and you love the Patriots. I respect that. I don't care. If you're a bandwagon, if you're from crapping Wisconsin, or just the farthest from Boston, Idaho, I don't know, and you're a crapping Patriots fan, unless you've been a fan for a long time, I don't respect you. So yeah, they signed Andrew Hawkins, and that's about it. I think that's Derek Carr extension talks, are they going to ramp up? Yeah, I would assume so. That's another stupid title for an article. Let's see here. I think that's it, guys. I think I'm missing something, so hold on for a second, because I think I am actually missing something. NFC South teams don't take on... Oh, jeez. I'm not even going to read that. Oh, ESPN hires Chip Kelly. I don't know why the heck I was waiting for that. Who cares? Chip Kelly looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he was not a good head coach. What else can I say about that? The man really was not a good head coach. Rex Ryan, who's going to be a great commentator, which I can't wait for, because Rex Ryan actually respect. The man's he knows football. He grew up in football royalty with Buddy Ryan, and obviously Rob Ryan, his brother. Just a great family, great people. Chip Kelly, the thing that he did, I just lost all respect for what he did to Philly, for what he did to Shady. Just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Eagles for a long time might as well have been the Oregon Ducks or the Pac-12 All-Star team, for God's sakes. That's how Chip Kelly drafted. It was terrible. Let's see here. I think that's it. I think we've covered it all. Yeah. I think we go through some minor things before we get out of here, but really nothing else. If you're a Patriots fan, if you're a Cowboys fan, Ryan Switzer's had a really good OTAs, which I hate you guys for drafting him because I really wanted him as a Dolphins fan. He looks, I mean, the man is he's just a great football player. And you guys got an absolute steal, even though you have his clone in Cole Beasley. I think Ryan Switzer's probably a whole lot more athletic than he is at this point in his career. Just probably not as savvy as a route runner because Cole Beasley's been one of the better route runners in the league for a while, but absolute steal for you guys. Obviously, Gronk, he's looked really good in OTAs. People are excited about that. That's about it. Yep. That's all the news, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the NFL podcast. Remember, this posts every Saturday. Every weekend Saturday. Today was Sunday. I apologize for that. Remember, we give you all the NFL news you need to know about. I'm sure there's, I got to make more notes for topics and stuff. So yeah, that's going to be it, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.